In the deep shadows of a closed-off nation where secrecy and absolute control reign, rare leaked footage has ignited shock and awe across the globe. These videos are not just mere recordings, they are flashes of light, revealing the suffocating, painful reality inside North Korea, a place often referred to as the world's largest prison. From daring nighttime escapes to the silent tears of children crushed by invisible fears, these images paint a brutal picture of a reality the government strives to hide. Shocking contrasts unfold, from the lavish lifestyle of the elite to the tragic fate of children sentenced to death simply for watching South Korean films, leaving viewers chilled to the bone. Are you ready to uncover the terrifying secrets exposed in these 14 videos that shook the world? Come with us into a world where the truth is far scarier than anything we could imagine. The escape from North Korea's hell, where every contact with the outside world is tightly controlled, is one such story. The story of Ju Chanyang reveals staggering details of how North Koreans escaped to seek freedom. Using secret signals arranged in advance with her father living in South Korea, and with the help of an intermediary from China, she received the news and traveled to the border with China to call her father. Ju Chanyang had crafted a bold plan, one that could cost her life with the smallest mistake. In the sweltering summer of 2010, she risked everything by heading to the dangerous border region. There, a North Korean soldier secretly involved in a smuggling ring helped her cross the river that separated the two worlds. In the darkness, the soldier silently held a plastic bag containing a mobile phone, the crucial lifeline for communication. With bravery and rare luck, she swam across the river and set foot in China, a step closer to freedom. Just a year later, she would arrive in South Korea, where her dream of escaping North Korea became a reality. Ju Chanyang recounts that deep within the hearts of North Koreans is a burning desire to know the truth of the outside world. They are curious about the lives of defectors, the salaries of South Koreans, and even whether South Korean women really have so many clothes, they cannot wear them all. But in North Korea, these dreams are suffocated by a strict internal communications network, where phones can only be used within the country, and the internet is a privilege reserved for the leadership elite. Her escape story not only exposes the harshness of life in North Korea, but also stands as a testament to the extraordinary courage of those who dare to dream of freedom, no matter the risks. Forced labor for watching South Korean films. Imagine a world where watching a movie could destroy your life. In hauntingly rare footage, we witness a chilling reality from North Korea, where seemingly harmless actions become pretexts for brutal repression. Two men stand motionless on stage, their eyes filled with resignation, while the crowd around them remains still, clad in identical uniforms as though produced from an emotionless mold. They face a panel of officials, but the verdict has already been decided: 12 years of forced labor. The reason for this harsh sentence? Watching and sharing a South Korean drama. In other parts of the world, this might be a simple act of entertainment, but in North Korea, it is an unforgivable crime. Those who dare to touch the culture of the puppet regime, the term used by the government to insult South Korea, face catastrophic consequences. Dragged into the vortex of oppression, these two men are now thrown into labor camps, where each day is a battle for survival. But this is not an isolated story. North Korea has long declared war on the Korean wave. Any films, songs, or anything carrying the shadow of freedom is seen as a deadly threat to the regime. Recently, another shocking event occurred. A series of USB drives containing South Korean dramas like were released across the border via balloons. Driven by curiosity and yearning, around 30 students secretly brought the USB drives home. But that fragile hope was quickly crushed when the authorities discovered it. These children not only lost their freedom, but may never see the light of day again. That cold, haunting scene serves as a grim reminder that in North Korea, there is no room for dreams. Sometimes just a moment of curiosity is enough to turn one's life into an inescapable nightmare. Pretending to cry in front of Kim Jong-un, imagine a country where crying is not an expression of emotion but a ticket to survival. In North Korea, whenever Kim Jong-un appears, the sea of people bursts into tears, not out of genuine emotion but because of a chilling obligation. From workers to farmers, from the elderly to children, everyone is forced to weep as if they were mourning their own parents. While Kim Jong-un walks with smug satisfaction like a grand emperor surrounded by sorrowful whales, this scene is not spontaneous. Since the death of Kim Jong-il, North Korean media has turned crying into a national duty. News broadcasts are filled with images of people screaming, beating their chests, and collapsing in endless grief. In reality, these tears fall into three categories: crying out of fear, crying because they are forced, and crying to protect themselves. Those who fail to cry or cry insufficiently face horrific consequences. A single indifferent glance or a tear lacking in sorrow can result in a report to the secret police. The price for such a mistake? 6 months in a labor camp where each day is a struggle for survival. 6 months in a labor camp where each day is a struggle for survival. You lose your freedom, but even worse, your ability to remain silent is stolen from you. Try to imagine you stand among the crowd, starving and gasping for breath, yet you must scream and weep as if mourning your parents. A country where tears are not for loved ones, but for a leader you may not even respect. This is the nightmare that North Koreans live with every day, where genuine emotions are buried under layers of artificial scripts. Would you have the courage to live in such a world, or would you bow your head, pretending to shed tears just to survive another day? Prisons in North Korea, another terrifying image from inside North Korea's prison system, one of the most horrifying places on earth. These secret prisons are not just places of incarceration, they are machines that crush both the body and the spirit, where all hope is suffocated. The story of Kenneth Bailly, a man who was held for 735 days there, reveals part of the nightmarish reality of this brutal system. Bailly, a 49-year-old man who had been living peacefully in Washington, became a target of the regime simply for praying for freedom from poverty for North Korea. Those words, in the eyes of the authorities, were an attempt to destroy the regime. Bailly was sentenced to 15 years of forced labor, plunging him into a nightmare with no escape. During his time in captivity, he endured unimaginable conditions. His body was exhausted by grueling labor, from digging trenches and smashing rocks to working on farms for 16 hours a day, 6 days a week. But that was not all. The endless nights in the prison camp were filled with sleep deprivation, as guards forced him to sleep on his knees or standing. Hungry, tired, and desperate, each day became a fight for survival. These prisons not only isolate prisoners from the outside world, but also drown them in total isolation, even from fellow nationals. These camps are located deep in remote mountain areas, where the phrase "sent to the mountains" has come to mean a death sentence. The largest prison in Pyongyang, believed to cover hundreds of square kilometers, is a graveyard for countless lives, where many prisoners never again see the light of day. About half of the prisoners are accused of political crimes. They do not need evidence or a fair trial. A mere accusation is enough to throw them into this hellish nightmare, and once someone enters these camps, few ever hope to return. Kenneth Bailly's story is only a small slice of this horrifying picture, but it raises a painful question: how can such a place even exist? And how many more lives will be destroyed in the darkness of this brutal prison system? How would you face a nightmare like this? The answer is perhaps never easy. The tragic story of Otto Warmbier. When 21-year-old Otto Warmbier, full of enthusiasm and curiosity about the world, set foot in North Korea, he had no idea that he was stepping into a land where nightmares were always lurking. The trip, advertised as a safe adventure, quickly turned into a dark tragedy, a story the world will never forget. Just days before leaving North Korea in January 2016, Otto was arrested. The reason? A seemingly harmless act, attempting to steal a propaganda poster from the Yanggakdo International Hotel. But in a country where every action is monitored and every mistake is inflated into anti-state activities, this act became a horrific accusation. 3 weeks later, images of Otto being escorted, his eyes filled with panic and despair, were broadcast worldwide. He was accused of plotting to overthrow the North Korean regime at the instigation of the US government. By March, he was sentenced to 15 years of hard labor, marking the beginning of an infernal journey from which Otto would never escape. But the tragedy did not end there. Otto was not just imprisoned, he fell into a coma under mysterious conditions that remain unanswered to this day. The North Korean regime claimed he suffered from food poisoning, but was that really the truth? When Otto was returned to the US in June 2017, his body was but a shadow of his former self, unresponsive, brain-dead, and near death. Just days later, his parents, in unimaginable sorrow, had to make the hardest decision to let him go. Although medical reports found no signs of external injuries, but the lack of oxygen had paralyzed Otto's brain. But who can believe that this happened naturally in a North Korean prison? The regime denied responsibility, but in 2018 a US court held North Korea accountable, ordering them to pay hundreds of millions of dollars in compensation to the Warmbier family. Otto Warmbier was not just a name, he became a symbol of pain and injustice in the dark secrets of one of the most brutal regimes in the world. The trip lasted only a few days, but the consequences will forever leave a painful scar on his family and humanity. North Korean soldiers breaking bricks with their heads. Under the bright lights of a grand ceremony, North Korean soldiers march onto the stage like steel warriors from a fairy tale. But this is no fantasy, it's a chilling reality. These men and women, made of flesh and bone, turn themselves into tools of destruction, smashing bricks with their heads, bending metal bars with their bare hands, and even letting massive stones crush their bodies without flinching. But under the watchful eyes of Kim Jong-un, the supreme leader worshipped like a god, these displays aren't just about physical strength. They send a message. Power doesn't just lie in modern weapons, but in the human body, the will to push past all limits. But stop for a moment and ask yourself, is this really strength or just bizarre propaganda? These scenes might remind you of 1980s action movies where heroes defy all physical boundaries. But behind these headbutts into bricks and bent metal bars, there's a chilling truth. This isn't strength, it's brainwashing, coercion. It's not about military tactics or modern warfare. It's about North Korea shouting at the world, "We are strong, we are invincible." But that strength is just a facade, hiding a much darker reality. While soldiers strain on beds of nails, millions of North Korean children struggle against hunger. Over 60,000 children are on the verge of death from malnutrition, and the sight of their tiny, emaciated bodies contrasts sharply with these national strength performances. Behind these grand displays are heartbreaking statistics. Millions of children not only deprived of food but also robbed of their childhood. They work from dawn to dusk, carrying tasks far too heavy for their small bodies. And, in the shadows of deprivation, the memory of the 1990s famine lingers like an unshakable nightmare, threatening once again to swallow an entire generation. So, what do you think when a country boasts about its muscle power while letting its children starve to death? Is this not the clearest image of cruelty and deceit? The heart-wrenching escape of a mother and child. The scene unfolds at the North Korea-China border, where a desperate escape is taking place across the frozen river that separates the two countries. A mother and her young daughter, their bare feet pressing against the sharp ice, each step a battle between the desire to survive and the shadow of death hanging over them. On the other side, in China, there's hope, fragile but real. Behind them, the cold, unfeeling guns of North Korean border guards are poised to fire without mercy. They aren't human, they are machines programmed to eliminate anyone who dares defy the regime. Then the inevitable happens. Gunshots explode, shattering the silence of the night, sending ice fragments flying. The mother falls, her eyes still fixed on the horizon where her daughter stands, shivering, frozen in shock. The soldier drags her back as if her life were a worthless object discarded without a second thought. The little girl stands there, her innocent eyes now filled with fear beyond words. No one knows what happens to her after that night. Will she find a way to survive? Or will she be caught and dragged back into the cold embrace of the regime? For defectors, freedom is a deadly gamble, and the prize is often nothing more than the darkness of despair. In the past 75 years, only around 200 people have successfully escaped to the United States, but that number is tiny compared to the countless lives lost on the journey. Here, the line between life and death is as fragile as the ice they walk across. Money, courage, and even love aren't enough to guarantee survival. The image of that lone child on the Yalu River is a painful symbol of North Korea's reality, where freedom is not a right but a distant dream. Meanwhile, those left behind, trapped in the massive cage of their country, live in perpetual fear and despair. Inside the luxurious world of Pyongyang. When poverty meets unimaginable wealth, Pyongyang, the capital of North Korea, becomes a city of two completely different worlds, where the gap between the rich and poor is not just a difference, but a chasm that cannot be crossed. In the outskirts, where darkness reigns and the city lights never seem to reach, the lives of the poor are a daily struggle for survival. Crumbling homes, broken walls, rusting tin roofs, everything reflects a society sinking in despair. Food and clothing are scarce, and the only meal of the day is often just rice and vegetables, sometimes with only salt. In winter, the cold is unbearable, with bare feet trudging through the snow to reach their workplaces. These workers, drenched in sweat and aching from hunger, endure exhausting jobs for pitiful pay. Children, innocent souls, don't go to school. Instead, they help their parents scrape by, leaving behind dreams that died long ago. For them, a bright future is an impossible dream, something only heard in stories told by the elderly who have long since lost hope. But if you step into the center of the city, a completely different world unfolds. The rich, powerful officials from ministries, the military, and state-owned enterprises live in grand palaces surrounded by luxury. Expensive imported cars glide through smooth asphalt streets, while the poor in the suburbs can't even afford a bicycle. Flat-screen TVs, high-end refrigerators, and household appliances, things that are ordinary in many other countries, are unreachable dreams for the impoverished masses. Despite North Korea facing harsh international sanctions since 2009, the elite in Pyongyang continue to live in unimaginable wealth. At night, they drink fine wine and savor lavish meals in their luxurious villas, while outside, millions of people struggle to survive, often without a decent meal. These elites live in a completely different world, one where the concept of hardship is a foreign word. Women trying to escape North Korea in a cold, unforgiving society, where every hope is crushed under the weight of the regime's cruelty. There are those who, despite the despair that surrounds them, still dare to fight for a way out. This is the story of a woman who courageously sought to escape the hellish life of North Korea, not once but twice. In her desperate fight for freedom, after her husband's unexpected death, she decided to flee, knowing full well that she might not survive the attempt. But as soon as she stepped outside, the regime's dark forces were already closing in on her. Captured and imprisoned in a brutal labor camp, where forced labor and physical punishment were routine, all hope seemed lost. Yet within her, an unyielding spirit still burned with a heart of steel. She made a second attempt to escape, her body battered by countless wounds, and her spirit broken. But the nightmare still wouldn't release its grip. Once again, she was caught, blindfolded, and dragged into the darkness. No one ever saw her again. The only thing left was the sound of the guards' cold footsteps, followed by an eerie silence. Matthew Miller, Life in the Darkness of North Korea. A chilling, mysterious, and haunting story. This is the tale of Matthew Miller, a 24-year-old from Bakersfield, California, who walked into an adventure he never imagined would turn into a nightmare. In April 2014, Miller decided to visit the isolated, dangerous country of North Korea, but what he didn't know was that this trip would drag him into a horrifying ordeal with no escape. It wasn't the arrival of a curious traveler, it was the beginning of a tragic nightmare. Instead of being just another tourist, Miller became a target in a deadly game few could have imagined. In a moment of reckless desperation, he ripped up his tourist visa, an act the North Korean regime viewed as a severe violation, branding him a spy. Without hesitation, the North Korean court sentenced Miller to 6 years of hard labor. He was thrown into a dark, freezing prison where despair became his constant companion. Each day became a battle between life and death, with survival itself a struggle. For months, Miller worked under the harsh sun, toiling in the fields for up to 8 hours a day, barely holding on to a sliver of hope. But the hardest part wasn't the back-breaking labor, it was the crushing isolation, the mental and emotional torment that few could fully understand. Just weeks before his release, Miller described his experience as hell in a rare phone call with his family. He shared that it wasn't just the hard labor, it was the relentless loneliness, the haunting fear of a brutal regime that knew no mercy. 1 million soldiers. For decades, North Korea has kept itself locked off from the outside world, like a cage with no way out. Inside, everything is controlled. Images, stories, and propaganda all serve to create a carefully curated illusion of strength. Anyone who dares defy this narrative faces ruthless punishment. But what happens when information slips through these walls? Secret videos reveal a terrifying truth. North Korean soldiers are training like real warriors, preparing to target enemies with precision, even mimicking US military tactics. When Kim Jong-un declared a state of war with South Korea, an explosion of anti-American propaganda swept through the country, turning the US into a brutal invader and South Korea into a puppet state under foreign manipulation. These images weren't just for show, they were part of the regime's preparation for a bloody conflict. North Korea could potentially deploy up to 1 million soldiers, a massive force filled with determination and strength. Despite the vast military disparity, these images raise a haunting question. Is this just a propaganda stunt, or are they preparing for an all-out war? As tensions mount, the question is no longer when, but what happens if. The story is far from over, but one thing is certain. This confrontation will not be as simple as it appears. Have you ever wondered why a country like North Korea has an international airport? It may sound paradoxical, but behind the high walls and dim lights of Pyongyang Airport lies a dark and strange story. This is not the place where you'll find crowds of tourists or bustling flights. Instead, the airport serves as a symbol of control, where no one, especially North Korean citizens, can freely come and go at will. So, what is the airport used for? Definitely not for welcoming tourists or regular flights. Pyongyang Airport primarily caters to diplomatic flights, where officials, political delegations, and the most powerful figures in the North Korean regime come and go. Everything here is stamped with strict control and absolute security. The goods imported or exported through this airport are not simple consumer items, but valuable goods intended for very specific purposes in an economy strangled by international sanctions. And if you're lucky, you're terrifyingly unlucky enough to be authorized to leave. You're one of the few favored ones. High-ranking officials, diplomats, and experts sent for official reasons are among the rare individuals allowed to step out of the tightly controlled bubble of the regime. Pyongyang Airport, unlike any airport you've ever known, sends a message that North Korea is not completely isolated. It can still maintain international relations, still engage in diplomatic conversations, albeit only for a select few. If you ever find yourself here, don't expect to see the typical bustling, crowded scene. This airport isn't for the masses, it's reserved for those with power, those who know how to maintain silence and control. 28 hairstyles. Imagine walking into a hair salon in Pyongyang, where every choice is strictly limited. There are only 28 approved hairstyles, not too many, not too few, but each one carries a cruel message from the dictatorship. Picture yourself having to choose from just these 28 styles, a part of the harsh regulations that govern North Korean society. Among these, women are seemingly favored with 18 styles to choose from, but even this is limited to those who still have some semblance of freedom within the controlled system. Married women, for example, are even allowed to have curly hair, a rare form of liberty in an otherwise stifled society. As for men, they have no real choice. Under the strict supervision of the government, North Korean men are permitted only 10 hairstyles and are not allowed to grow their hair longer than 5 centimeters. This bizarre rule stems from the belief that long hair robs nutrients from the brain. Thus, the hair must be short, and the shorter, the better. Young men are not allowed to express any individuality, as they must adhere to a haircut rule that requires them to trim their hair every half-month, and don't even think about copying Kim Jong-un's signature style. The iconic shaved sides and longer top hairstyle of the supreme leader is notably absent from the approved list. This sends a clear message. Not even your hair is allowed to overshadow the power of the supreme leader. These 28 hairstyles, these cold, lifeless numbers, represent far more than just haircuts. They symbolize control, repression, and an absolute lack of freedom. So, which hairstyle would you choose from these limited options? 14 secret videos, footage that due to a mere oversight, North Korea accidentally revealed to the world, shocking everyone. These images not only unveil dark secrets but they also deliver unforgettable shocks. Do you feel a chill at the level of brutality and control, or have you ever wondered, what if I ever visit North Korea to witness these dark secrets firsthand? Leave your thoughts in the comments and share your feelings with us. Thank you for watching this video. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you don't miss the latest content from us. You won't want to miss what comes next. See you in the next video.